Good. This is Nick Matson from the Hayden Library, and we are broadcasting live from the Hayden Library right now in the children's office. My friends, we are going to be doing our first newfangled chat for the summer right here, right now. We're going to be holding our online chats on the second Tuesdays of the month. So we'll have one in June, in July, August, and then we're also going to have face-to-face chats that we're going to be doing fourth Tuesdays. We'll also have those in June, July, and August. So right now, it doesn't look like we have any viewers right now, but we will be archiving this on our YouTube channel, sharing it on Edmodo for you, and we will be promoting this through our summer reading program. For those that aren't a part of our summer reading program as well, that is something that we offer through the summer, obviously. We're going to be doing a leveled reading program this year for our summer reading program. So at 5 hours, you get a free book. At 10 hours, you get a pass to the North Idaho Fair and Rodeo. Another free book, and then at 20 hours you are going to be able to get a free pass to go to Strike Zone and play laser tag at the end of the summer. At 25 hours, at 30 hours, at 35 hours, you're going to be able to put your name into a gift card drawing. The gift cards are for Texas Roadhouse, but also for the Hayden Discount Cinema. So thank you for being a part of Newfangled, and if you'd also like to be a part, which is what I was just talking about with all of those leveled prizes, you can let us know and we can get you registered for that as well. So we're going to have free books through Newfangled, and also a lot of free books and prizes for reading over the summer over at the Hayden Library and all of the Community Library Network libraries. So enough of the commercials. Right now we're going to be doing our Newfangled chat. And so once again, this is what we're going to be doing every summer, the second Tuesdays online and the fourth Tuesdays in the library, the Hayden Library itself. So right now, our June selection was Last Free Cat by, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the first 18 chapters, and that's pages 1 through 136 of the edition that we have. If you don't have your edition of The Last Free Cat yet, please let us know. Swing by the library and we can definitely get you a copy of that book. So as we don't have a ton of visitors right now online, I'm just going to be chatting for a couple of minutes. Going to be sharing a couple of questions that I had from the text. Going to be sharing those over on Edmodo. If you feel like answering those questions, please do so, and we'll be responding over the week as well. So I think we're just going ahead and jump in to The Last Free Cat here. So the first thing that you notice when you are reading that chapter, the first chapter of the book, is that it's actually a flashback. Well, a flash forward. It's that we're dropped into the middle of the action, and then at the end of that chapter it says, oh, I remember back to when all of this started. Flash forward and a back to what's happening there. The question, did mechanic drag you into the story right away? Was it interesting to catch a glimpse of an event that's going to happen a little bit further in the story there? And that was something that I found dropped me into the action, and it was something that I found rather interesting right away. So I did enjoy that portion of the story right there. Going to see if we have anyone that has joined us. Looks like we have one viewer. If you want to let us know over on Edmodo who you are, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and well, actually this evening now. We used to do our online chats from 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Now we're doing them from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We figured that after dinner time might be a little bit easier for people. You can have your day at the beach over the summer, your day at Silverwood, and then join us for that newfangled chat at the end of that. So right now, if you're just joining us, we're reading The Last Free Cat. We are going to be talking about the first 18 chapters, and I just threw a question over on Edmodo. So if you want to respond to that, feel free. Otherwise, we're just going to get ourselves continuing to be chatting here. All right. Now, this story here reads very much like a realistic fiction kind of story. It's actually set in a foreseeable future, a may-believe foreseeable future. So it is a dystopian novel. So it's a novel where society has gotten to a point where things are supposed to be fantastic because of a lot of government help, we've kind of advanced in technology, and yet we find ourselves in a society that might have the rules a little bit and things not quite as good as they might appear on the surface. And so in that world, the author, Jon Blake, gives us a lot of detail of the world that the characters are in, the main characters, Jade and Chris. The interesting thing is that the author gives us this example is the strike that Chris mentions on page 69. Chris mentions that there was a strike, mentioned that New Market were the company that broke that strike and didn't let the strike continue on. And yet the characters really don't mention a lot else past that. And I'm wondering, is that something that made the book a little bit more interesting? Because it just made you assume that, oh, this is a real happened, so I wouldn't be background information? Or was it a little bit confusing because you really didn't know what was happening with the characters there? So that's another question that I'm going to throw up on Edmodo, and you can answer at your leisure, whether while we're talking or during the week. I'm going to see, it doesn't look like anyone's responded on Edmodo. That is totally fine. Have a couple of viewers online right now. Feel free to post your comments on Edmodo, or you can just watch the video live right here. And then you can also catch this recording archived on our YouTube channel. Another question that kind of ties into the question that I just asked about does it make the book a little bit more confusing that we're not given a lot of background information, or does it make it more interesting that you're involved in the story? I was wondering, is that something to do with who is telling the story? This is obviously a first-person narrative. So Jade is using the pronouns of I. She is actually telling us a story from her perspective. So we have flashbacks, we have flash forwards. Is that something that impacting the way that the told, having it be from her perspective? Also, is that something that you are enjoying right now, or for a person that we're seeing view? Gonna put that question up on Edmodo as we continue on in our discussion of The Last Free Cat. And I'm just going to continue on. Don't have a lot of responses on Edmodo right now. This is something that we're going to be promoting on our social media, on Edmodo, on our email list. And so we're hoping that a couple of people will go back and watch this archived video, respond on Edmodo. And if you're watching it later, thank you so much for doing so. Feel free to respond on Edmodo to the questions that we've posted, or post your own questions as well. And this is another piece of how the story is being told by for Chris. The narrator mentions something that is coming next before it happens. Have you read any stories that have been that is similar to that? Back in the winter, I believe it was our February or our March book, we read The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. And that was something that his narrator also did quite a bit, kind of fast forward in the story, kind of give us a little taste of something that might be coming, and then kind of fell back into the actual timeline of where the story was going to be. Is that something that you've been enjoying? Is that something, are there any other books that you can think of that also use that plot device that we are noticing in The Last Free Cat the winter in The Book Thief? I have another quote that I wanted to read you guys. This one's coming from page 37. And Chris is speaking, and he says, "Yeah, on the slave web," laughed Chris, "owned by James Varafra, head of the Varafra Corporation, the same people that own the cats?" Chris was perplexed by Jade's kind of naivety, thinking that what she was reading online on the slave web of what Chris was calling it was actually legit, saying that the cat flu was something that was actually legitimate. And Chris, having read things on the free web, says that that is complete baloney sauce. That's not true, actually. So Chris mentions that the same people that own the cats, those large corporations, that would be in their best interest to hide some of the information about the cat flu, are the same people that were putting up information on the slave web of what Chris was talking about. And that's obviously in the future in that made-up world. Do you think that's something that might happen today, whether that's on social media, whether that's on magazines or newspapers or websites that deliver news, or news that you might watch online, or news you might watch on the television, or advertising? Do you think that own organizations, do you think that they might change the way that things are shown to make themselves look better, or to change the way that things happen? And I'm going to throw that question up on Edmodo right now, post that one. And I scrolled down just a little bit on Edmodo. It looks like Brooke has joined us. Thank you so much, Brooke, for joining us today. And let's see here. She was responding to a question a little bit later. A little bit earlier, the author mentions many of the world and make it more confusing, or did you enjoy that? Brooke says it was better because it seemed more natural than explaining what was happening before it happened. And that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of what I thought as well, Brooke. It kind of just puts you into the world and assume that this is a real life world. So we're not going to give you all the details. We're just going to make believe that this is an actual world. Brooke also said, I like the flashback later in the story and the current events in the first chapter because it went straight into the action. And once again, Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today on our chat. Let's see here. Brooke is saying that the plot element would kind of give the narrator mentioning something that happens before it happens. She mentioned that that happened in The Book Thief, and it also happened for Good and Evil, which is another story that she's read. Brooke says that she finished the book in 2 days, and I read half of the book while I was getting ready for this chat, and I'm really interested to see where the story goes from here. So we just talked a little bit about page 37 and the slave web. And do you think that people owning news organizations or social media impacts what kind of news is being shared on those sites? Something that I mentioned multiple times, something that I was noticing while I was reading the book, is that Chris doesn't respond in a normal way. Jade has a lot of situations that happen in the book that are really painful ultimately. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I think if you've read the book, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Many painful situations that happen to her, and Chris doesn't really comfort her. He's really not there for her, really doesn't talk to her about what is going on. Do you think that that is acceptable? Is that an acceptable way to respond when someone that you know is hurting? And another question, like the character of Chris. Do you like the character of Jade? Are there characters that you like? I've read many dystopian novels set in a world in the future where there's just not many fantastic things. It's a very difficult world to live in. That the characters can become very hard, very closed off, not very compassionate toward those around them, not very considerate. Is that something that you've noticed as well? Is that something that you're noticing in this book? Or do you think that Jade or Chris has some compassion or some consideration for the characters that are around them? So another question that we have right now is, obviously, as Jade and Chris begin their trek to try to escape to keep Fila safe, do you think that the things that they did to avoid being captured, do you think those things seem realistic? And were you worried about the characters when they found themselves in those situations? Were you drawn into the story? Were you just like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? How are they going to get out of that? Or was it just like, I'm not too worried about the characters? Were you drawn into the story while those things were happening there? I think I'm going to quick type up a little bit about what we were talking about in some dystopian, dystopian fiction. Characters are very hard and not considerate because of circumstance that they live in. Do you think that applies to Jade, Chris, or other characters in this? Gonna post that moto here real fast. Another question that you can consider, Brooke, you can consider that right now, or if anyone's able to watch these videos archived later on YouTube, feel free to jump on Edmodo and get those things and respond to questions. Video you catch it on our YouTube channel, catch it on our social media, or on our Edmodo, and you can't quite get onto your Edmodo account, or you have a question about anything that we do here on the Newfangled Book Club, please let me hold of me or through social media, or if you're able to log into Edmodo, you can ask me those questions on Edmodo, and we'll be more than glad to respond to those questions there. So, and if all else fails, you can call the library and ask for Nick Matson, and they'll be able to get a hold of me that way as well. So we're going to continue our discussion here. Brooke responded to our question, and Brooke says, I was more nervous for Fila as I am addicted to cats, and most of the time it was pretty realistic. And that was my impression of the situation as well, Brooke. I was impressed with how the narrator and the author was able to give us a very realistic story, even though it's set in circumstances that aren't necessarily actually real. Brooke also responded to another question that we had about, do you like Chris? And Brooke says, he is very annoying and should be more of a friend to Jade after all they had been through, instead of acting like he was forced to go along with Jade. And she was also responding to that slave web comment about, do you think the people that own them influence the media that we have? And Brooke says, yes, of course, because they get to control how the people think and they can influence the citizens. And in the last book, and the last question we had here about, are these dystopian characters kind of hard? Brooke says, in the beginning, Chris is closed off to Jade, but opens up after time goes on. In this specific book, the characters are pretty normal acting. Thank you for that perspective, Brooke. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I have a couple more questions before we sign off today. And one of the questions is on page 115. We read, I found this really daunting. And this is Jade speaking. I didn't want to be anyone's hero. I didn't want their hopes resting on me. I just wanted to get somewhere safe. That is where she meets the Free Cats Coalition and those people, the people that are striving to have cats actually be free instead of just controlled by those large corporations and the government. And they obviously have the motivation of keeping those cats safe. What is Jade's motivation in this story? What is Chris's motivation? Why are they protecting Fila? Why are they with each other? Why are they going on this quest to make things happen? You can respond to that over on Edmodo as well. And one last question that I want to put to you that are watching, and also those that are watching this a little bit later, as you respond to those questions that we have on Edmodo, is how would you describe Jade and Chris's interaction? How would you describe the way they treat each other? Would you call them friends, enemies, acquaintances, frenemies? Do you think there's more going on there? Do you think there's feelings that they're not necessarily sharing with each other? You can respond to that over on Edmodo as well. So those are all the questions that I had in the first half of the last free cat. Well, that's not true. There was a lot of other questions that I had. I think some of those questions are going to be answered later on in the book. But there's also questions that, oh man, I want to ask that as I'm reading it, but then I forgot to write them down. So if you feel free to share those on Edmodo. And feel free to do that now during the week. Do that on, you can get a hold of us on Google Plus if you are available on Google Plus. You can also get a hold of us through the email list, or give us a call or an email. So right now, that was pretty much looks interesting. Brooke had one more thought for us. She was commenting on, what do you think the character's motivation is? And Brooke thinks that motivation is all for Fila, and she thinks it's the same motivation for Chris. So it's not necessarily that they are trying to save cats everywhere. They're just trying to save Fila. And another thing that Brooke says in regards to how do you describe Chris, shorter terms, she ships them. I think that after a while they get feelings for each other. And that could be the case. It seems that in this part in the story, as Jade is going to that party, that there's some feelings there, and maybe Chris is acting strangely. Brooke says in the beginning they feel like they are forced to be together, maybe a little bit on. We might see them warm up to each other. So as we get ready for our chat at the end of the month, we're not going to have another online chat until the second Tuesday of July, and that one will be from 7 to 7:30 p.m. as well. Our chat, that'll be at the Hayden Library. That one's going to be happening on June 28th from 4:30 to 5:30 here at the Hayden Library. And then feel free to be reading the book. Let us know that you're reading in between now and then, and we will catch you online on Edmodo. And if you are interested in being a part of the summer reading club, the summer reading adventure that we're doing here at the library, where you can earn even more free books and also that pass to do laser tag strike zone, let us know either on Edmodo or through our email, and we can get you hooked up online there as well. So my friends, thank you so much for joining us. Brooke, thank you for being online with us right now. If you're watching this a little bit later, thank you for logging on. Feel free to go over to Edmodo and respond to those questions. And we will see you all on June 28th here at the library from 4:30 to 5:30. And also for any of the events that we're having here at the library over the summer. There's a whole bunch of them. Our next event is going to be this Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. just here for the library, not for Newfangled, just for the library itself, a little bit of cross promotion. We're going to be making a movie in 4 hours. So we're going to be starting at 5 o'clock and from 5 to 9 this Saturday here at the Hayden, making a movie. Then I'm going to edit it together and post that to YouTube. So if you like to make movies, feel free to join me at the library from 5 to 9 this Saturday. And for Newfangled, join us at the library on June 28th from 5:30 to 5:30. Thank you so much for watching the video. Brooke, thank you for this live, and we'll see you online. Bye, guys.